I was working at a train station in Brussels when an American couple walked up to my counter looking stressed. The man slid his credit card across and said he needed 2 tickets to Paris right now. I told him the next direct train left in 40 minutes. He stared at me like I'd just told him the moon was closed. 40 minutes? He said. Can't you just call them and tell them to wait? I blinked. Sir, it's a scheduled train. He leaned in closer. Yeah, but we're already here. We're ready to go. His wife nodded like this was the most reasonable request in the world. I explained that trains run on fixed schedules, that hundreds of people had already booked seats. He looked genuinely confused. In America, if you pay extra, they accommodate you. I didn't know how to explain that Europe's rail system wasn't a private Uber. If you notice these moments, too, where American logic crashes into a world that just works differently, you're exactly the kind of viewer this channel is built for. Most people scroll past. The smart ones subscribe so they don't miss the deeper stories behind these cultural collisions. They eventually took the tickets, but spent the entire wait complaining that customer service here was terrible. Another time, I was walking through a quiet neighborhood in Copenhagen around 9 at night. An American tourist was on his phone, talking loudly about a business deal. People were staring from their windows. An older Danish woman came outside and politely asked him to lower his voice. He looked offended. I'm on a public street, he said. I can talk however I want. She explained that after 8, neighborhoods observe quiet hours out of respect. He laughed. That's insane. You guys don't have freedom of speech here? She just shook her head and went back inside. He kept talking at the same volume, not realizing that in Denmark, nobody was impressed by his right to be loud. They just thought he was rude. My cousin worked at a hotel in Rome. An American guest called the front desk at 11 at night, furious that all the restaurants nearby were closed. Well, what kind of city shuts down at 11? He demanded. My cousin explained that in Italy, most local places close around 10 or 10:30. The guest couldn't believe it. In the States, I can get food at 2 in the morning. Easy. He wanted my cousin to personally find him an open restaurant, as if she controlled the entire city's operating hours. She suggested a 24-hour McDonald's near the train station. He was insulted. I didn't come to Italy for McDonald's. But he also wasn't willing to accept that Roman neighborhoods don't cater to late-night cravings. He left a 1-star review saying Rome had no infrastructure. I remember another story from a friend in Japan. An American visitor got annoyed that nobody at a small ramen shop spoke English. He kept saying, "Does anyone here speak English?" Louder and louder, as if volume would translate his words. The shop owner tried using a translation app, but the guy got impatient. "This is ridiculous," he muttered. You'd think, in a major city, people would know English. My friend, who was sitting nearby, wanted to tell him that he was in Japan, not California. But the man just paid and left, convinced the problem was everyone else. I was working as a tour guide in Prague when I overheard an American couple arguing with a taxi driver. They'd just gotten a ride from the airport to their hotel, and the driver charged them the standard metered fare, around 800 crowns. The husband was furious. "We didn't agree on this price," he shouted. The driver pointed at the meter. Meter was running. "You saw it," the wife jumped in. "In America, you negotiate the price first." The driver looked exhausted. "This is Prague. We use meters. It's the law." They refused to believe this was normal. They kept insisting they'd been scammed, that the whole city was corrupt. I had to step in and explain that metered taxis are standard across Europe. They finally paid, but spent the rest of the tour talking about how unsafe Prague was. Another day, I was at a cafe in Amsterdam. An American tourist tried to pay for a €2 coffee with a €50 note. The barista apologized and said she didn't have change for that. The customer looked annoyed. "What do you mean you don't have change? You're a business." The barista explained that small cafes often don't keep large amounts of cash on hand, especially early in the morning. The guy threw his hands up. This would never happen in America. Businesses are prepared. He acted like it was a personal insult, like the cafe existed just to inconvenience him. Eventually, another customer offered to break his 50 at a nearby shop, but the guy left in a huff, muttering about how disorganized Europe was. I had a friend working at a train ticket office in Germany. An American traveler wanted to buy a ticket for a train that had left 10 minutes ago. My friend explained he'd missed it and would need to wait for the next one in an hour. The traveler got defensive. "Can't you just radio them or something?" My friend was confused. "Radio them?" The guy gestured vaguely. "Yeah, tell them to come back or hold on. I'm literally right here." My friend explained that trains don't turn around. The traveler genuinely seemed to think trains worked like taxis. "Well, that's a terrible system," he said. "What if someone's running late?" My friend told him that's why schedules exist. The guy bought the next ticket, but left a complaint saying German trains were inflexible. In Spain, I watched an American family get upset at a restaurant because lunch service didn't start until 1:30. It was noon. The father kept saying, "But we're hungry now." The waiter explained that kitchens in Spain don't open for lunch until later, because that's when locals eat. The father couldn't process this. "So you're just turning away customers?" The waiter said they'd be happy to serve them at 1:30. The father acted like this was discrimination. In the States, the customer decides when they eat, not the restaurant. They ended up leaving to find a tourist trap that served food all day, then complained online that authentic Spanish restaurants were snobby. I was at a grocery store in Norway when I saw an American couple shocked at the prices. The woman picked up a block of cheese and said, $15 for cheese? This is insane, her husband agreed. They're ripping off tourists. A Norwegian shopper nearby corrected them politely. That's normal here. Norway is expensive. The woman shook her head. No one can afford to live here. The Norwegian smiled. We can. We just have higher wages. But the couple didn't want to hear it. They kept comparing everything to Walmart prices, unable to accept that different economies work differently. They left with almost nothing. Convinced Norway was a scam, my sister worked at a hostel in Portugal. An American guest complained that the room didn't have air conditioning. My sister explained that most older buildings in Lisbon don't have AC because the climate is usually mild, and people use fans. The guest was outraged. It's 75 degrees in here. That's unlivable. My sister pointed out that 75 Fahrenheit is around 24 Celsius, which most Europeans consider comfortable. The guest didn't care. I paid money for this room. I deserve AC. My sister offered a fan. He refused. Fans don't work. He ended up checking out early and leaving a review saying Portugal was a developing country. I remember a story from a friend in Switzerland. An American tourist asked why the train ticket was so expensive. My friend explained that Swiss trains are extremely reliable, clean, and punctual. The tourist scoffed. In America, we have cars. We don't need trains. My friend asked why he was using the train then. The tourist said he didn't want to deal with driving on the other side of the road. But you're complaining about the train you chose to use, my friend said. The tourist didn't see the irony. He just wanted Switzerland to have American prices without understanding that quality. Costs money. I was working at a museum in Athens when an American visitor got frustrated that all the signs were in Greek and English. Why isn't everything just in English? He asked. I explained that Greek is the national language. He said, yeah, but English is universal. It'd be easier for everyone. I asked if he thought American museums should have all signs in Spanish and Chinese too. He said that was different. Most people stop at the laugh. They miss what this really shows, how cultural dominance shapes perspective. If that kind of analysis is your speed, subscribe. I break this down every week, not to mock travelers, but to decode the psychology behind the misunderstandings. America is America. But over here, you guys should adapt. He genuinely didn't see the contradiction. He spent his whole visit complaining that Greece wasn't accommodating enough. Another time, I was at a dinner party in France. An American guest got upset that no one was passing bread around the table. In France, you take bread from the basket yourself when you want it. She kept waiting for someone to offer it to her. Finally, she asked loudly, "Is anyone going to pass the bread?" The host looked confused and gestured to the basket right in front of her. She got embarrassed and said, "Well, in America, we pass things." The host smiled politely. "Here, we help ourselves." But the guest stayed annoyed, like French table manners were a personal slight against her. I had a friend working at a pharmacy in Italy. An American customer wanted to buy a large bottle of painkillers. My friend explained that in Italy, you can only buy small packs and need a prescription for larger quantities. The customer was offended. "I'm an adult. I should be able to buy what I want." My friend explained it's a safety regulation. The customer said, "In America, we trust people to make their own choices." My friend said, "In Italy, we prevent overdoses." The customer left, muttering about nanny states, unable to see that maybe regulations exist for good reasons. In Sweden, I watched an American tourist get confused at a bus stop. He kept trying to hail buses like taxis, waving his arms. A local told him, "Buses only stop if you press the button at the stop." He looked annoyed. "That's so complicated. Why don't they just stop automatically?" The local explained it saves time and fuel. The tourist said, "In America, buses stop at every stop. It's simple." The local shrugged. "That's why your buses are always late." The tourist didn't have a comeback for that. I was at a cafe in Vienna when an American asked for his coffee to go. The barista gave him a strange look and made the coffee in a paper cup. As he left, another customer explained that in Vienna, coffee culture is about sitting and enjoying it. To-go coffee is seen as disrespectful to the tradition. The American overheard and came back. "So you're telling me I'm rude for wanting efficiency?" The customer said no, just different. The American shook his head. "You guys really care about the weirdest things." He couldn't understand that maybe slowing down wasn't weird, just different. My cousin worked at a bookstore in Ireland. An American customer asked if they had the book in normal English. My cousin asked what he meant. The customer said, "You know, American English, without all the British spelling." My cousin explained that in Ireland they use Irish and British English standards. The customer sighed. "It's just annoying to read color with a U. Can't you stock the American version?" My cousin said they could order it, but it'd take weeks. The customer left, genuinely annoyed that Ireland didn't cater to American spelling preferences. I remember a story from Japan. An American visitor got frustrated that people kept bowing instead of shaking hands. He tried forcing handshakes, grabbing people's hands. They looked uncomfortable. A local friend finally told him that bowing is respectful and handshakes feel invasive to many Japanese people. The American said, "But handshakes are universal." The friend said, "No, they're Western." The American couldn't accept this. "Bowing is so formal and weird." The friend replied, "To us, grabbing strangers' hands is weird." That finally made him stop, but he still seemed convinced his way was normal and everyone else was strange. In Germany, I was at a park when an American jogger got annoyed that people weren't moving out of his way on the path. He kept yelling, "Excuse me!" But in Germany, paths are shared spaces. You slow down and go around people politely. The jogger got increasingly frustrated. In America, people move when you say, "Excuse me." A German cyclist told him, "In Germany, we don't expect the world to move for us." The jogger scoffed and kept running aggressively. Later, he tripped over a dog leash because he wasn't paying attention. No one felt sorry for him. I was working at a hardware store in London when an American asked for a 1/4-inch bolt. I showed him the metric section. He looked lost. "No, I need it in inches." I explained that the UK mostly uses metric now for hardware. He got frustrated. "This is England! You guys invented inches." I had to explain that the UK switched to metric decades ago. He refused to believe it. Why would you abandon your own system? I didn't know how to tell him that the imperial system isn't something people are proud of. He left empty-handed, muttering about globalism. Another time, I was at a weather station in Iceland. An American tourist asked why the temperature display showed 18 degrees when it felt cold. I explained it was Celsius. He said, "Why don't you use Fahrenheit?" I told him only America and a couple other countries use Fahrenheit. He was shocked. Really? I thought everyone used it? I showed him a world map of temperature systems. He stared at it for a long time, then said, "Well, Fahrenheit is more accurate." I explained they're just different scales. He didn't want to hear it. Celsius doesn't make sense. Water freezes at 0? That's random. I told him that's literally the point. It's based on water. He left unconvinced. I had a friend working at a gas station in Canada. An American driver got angry that gas prices were posted per liter instead of per gallon. "How am I supposed to know how much I'm paying?" He shouted. My friend explained you multiply by roughly 4 to get the gallon price. The driver said, "That's ridiculous. Just post it in gallons." My friend said, "We use liters in Canada." The driver responded, "But I'm American." As if that changed the metric system. He filled up anyway, then complained the entire time that Canada was trying to confuse tourists on purpose. In Belgium, I watched an American tourist argue with a shopkeeper about the date format. The receipt said 23/10/2024. The tourist insisted it was wrong. "There's no 23rd month," he said. The shopkeeper explained that Europe writes day, month, year. The tourist said, "That's backwards." The shopkeeper asked how month, day, year made more sense. The tourist said, "Because that's how we say it." "October 23rd. The shopkeeper replied, "We say 23rd of October." The tourist had no response, but still seemed convinced Europe had it wrong. I was at a university in Amsterdam when an American exchange student asked why. Everyone kept talking about the war. "Which war?" he asked. The Dutch students looked at him strangely. "World War II," one said. The American student nodded. "Oh yeah, we won that." The room went quiet. A student said, "The Allies won that." The Netherlands was occupied. Tens of thousands of Dutch people died. The American looked uncomfortable. "Yeah, but America saved you guys, right?" Another student said, "The Canadians liberated us, actually." The American clearly didn't know this. He tried to recover by saying, "Well, America helped." No one disagreed, but his assumption that America single-handedly won the war made everyone uncomfortable. My sister was a teaching assistant in Scotland. An American student asked why they had to learn about the Scottish Enlightenment. "Isn't that British history?" he asked. My sister explained that Scotland is part of Britain but has its own distinct history and culture. The student said, "I thought England and Britain were the same thing." My sister spent 20 minutes explaining the difference between England, Britain, and the United Kingdom. The student still looked confused. "So you're English, but also Scottish?" My sister said, "I'm Scottish, not English." The student said, "Same thing, though." My sister gave up. I remember a story from a friend in Mexico. An American tourist asked why people were speaking Spanish. "Doesn't everyone here speak English?" The friend said, "This is Mexico. Spanish is the official language." The tourist said, "Yeah, but for tourists, you'd think they'd use English." My friend explained that Mexico isn't obligated to speak English for tourists. The tourist said, "In America, we have translators everywhere." My friend said, "That's because America has immigrants from everywhere. Mexico's main language is Spanish." The tourist still seemed to think this was Mexico being difficult. In Greece, I was at a historical site when an American visitor asked the guide how old the Parthenon was. The guide said it was built in the 5th century BC. The visitor said, "So, like 500 years old?" The guide corrected him, "No, about 2,500 years old." The visitor was stunned. That's older than America. The guide smiled. Much older. The visitor then said, why didn't they rebuild it to look new? The guide explained it's preserved as a historical artifact. The visitor said, in America, we'd fix it up. The guide replied, in Greece, we respect its age. The visitor didn't understand why anyone would want to keep old ruins old. I was working at an airport in Dublin when an American passenger missed his flight. He came to the desk furious, demanding we put him on the next one for free. I explained he'd need to buy a new ticket. He couldn't believe it. In America, they accommodate you when you're late. I asked if he'd ever actually experienced that. He paused. Well, no, but I assumed they would. I told him airlines everywhere have the same policies. He still felt like Ireland was being unfair specifically to him. He paid for the new ticket, but made sure to tell me that customer service was better back home, even though he'd just admitted he'd never tested that theory. That's the thing about a lot of these stories. It's not that Americans are bad travelers or ignorant people. It's that some genuinely believe the world runs on American logic, American systems, American expectations. And when reality hits, when the train doesn't wait, when the restaurant closes at 10, when the price is in euros and liters and Celsius, it feels like a personal attack instead of just a difference. The world isn't refusing to accommodate America. The world is just being itself. It existed long before the United States did, and it'll keep running on its own systems long after. My favorite story is from a friend in Norway. An American tourist said to him, "You guys are so lucky you speak English." My friend replied, "We don't speak English. We speak Norwegian. We learned English as a second language." The tourist was amazed. "Wait, you all learned English just for tourists?" My friend laughed. "No, we learned it for international communication, business, and education." The tourist said, "That's so much work." My friend shrugged. "It's normal for us." The tourist thought for a moment, then said, "I could never learn another language." My friend wanted to say that maybe that was the problem, but he didn't. He just smiled and let the moment pass. And that's kind of the point. The world doesn't care if you find Celsius confusing. It doesn't care if you think trains should wait for you. It doesn't care if you're shocked that Greece is older than your country, or that Japan prefers bowing to handshakes. The world keeps spinning. The difference is whether you choose to learn from it or spend your whole trip complaining that it isn't home. Because here's the secret. No one else is trying to be home. They're just being where they are, doing what makes sense to them. And maybe that's the most American struggle of all. If you want to see the world with that kind of clarity, to understand, not just react, subscribe now. I decode global behavior like this every week, so you don't have to learn it the hard way on your next flight. Realizing that the rest of the world isn't confused. You are. And trust me, these stories never stop coming.